Hi, everyone, and happy Thursday. We're going to get started. Sorry, we waited a couple minutes for everyone to join. My name is Lorena Fikes, and I'm part of our marketing team here at Tatango. And I'm excited to introduce you to Kevin O'Kane. He is our SVP of Customer Success for today's webinar, Building a High-Performing Customer Success Team. Let me go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar will be recorded and the link will be sent to you in the next 24 hours via email. All attendees are placed in listen mode only, and the Q&A icon at the bottom of the webinar window is available to you should you have any questions or want to submit questions. We will take a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes at the end to answer any questions. So without further ado, let me welcome Kevin O'Kane.
All right, thanks, Lorena. And I'll just also say thank you for joining everyone, and also for the topic. We've continued to solicit input from the attendees of these webinars to prioritize what topic we'll cover next, and that'll be true again for the next one here. But happy to join you all today, and let's start right in. So. What I'll end up talking through are 7 approaches that are going to be focused on building out a customer-centered culture and also a highly performing customer success team. I'll just dive right in, and we'll try and save some time for Q&A at the end as well. So the first approach I wanted to speak about was essentially something that would help to reduce friction in the organization, and this would be true for customer success team, but also across the entire company, by essentially removing any conflicting areas of focus that employees might experience. And so the approach is essentially aligning all of your aspirations in the directions that get set in a company. And so there's a variety of them, as you can see here on the slide. And so at the highest level, there's typically a purpose or the team. And so essentially this is, why does the company or team exist? And so of course that'll vary by industry, but generally there's some great ambition or reason that the company does exist. That's established, and what that gets complemented by are a variety of the other items that are listed here. So you get into the area of company vision and mission that would lay out what position you want to be in and by when. So this might be a market position or a certain level in terms of capability. And that will get measured, of course, by goals and their corresponding KPIs that essentially will give indications to the organization on your overall progress. And then layering in, there's going to be organizational priorities. So what is it that you're doing? What tactics are you employing that are going to create the path to achieving that mission? And also, that'll give some indication to employees on what is valued on a day-to-day basis. So obviously, if something is on that priority list, there'll be a spotlight put on it. If something's missing, that's going to be obvious to employees as well. Your brand promise. So, what do you commit out to the market? What does that say to your commitment to the success of customers? And then, probably some different ways of expressing this, but essentially core values. It might be labeled as an organizational DNA. But what are the principles that make your company what it is, and how does that relate to employees? And then last but not least, employee and leadership behavior. So how leaders and employees act on a regular basis, and that may or may not be something that is put down on paper and put into writing, but it does represent how the vision, strategic priorities are actually fulfilled. And so if misaligned, and I'll just give a couple of examples. So if the purpose and mission is to deliver great things for your customers in whatever industry you happen to be in, but if your organizational priorities essentially are all around revenue generating, and there's not the balanced view of that incorporates some priorities that relate to customers. What you'd probably expect is that when you get all the way down to employee and leadership behaviors, there's going to be some reinforcement of the organizational priorities and goals that were set, which in the example I gave might be more around selling and less around customers. And so making sure that there's alignment top to bottom for all of these aspirations is important to really remove any conflict that can affect employees, and it might also then affect some of the things that you want teams to deliver on. And so that is approach number one, and I'll move on to approach number two here. So engaging heart. So what I mean by that is really having some emotional connection with employees that really ties to customers more often than not. And so if the purpose and the mission of the company is centered somehow on customers or doing good in the world, packaging that up and sharing examples of employees that are really getting that done, that are delivering those success, packaging up success stories, and really making sure that there's a constant focus on bright spots. I think stories are very compelling ways of telling how you're actually across the organization helping customers to achieve great things, is a great way to also role model the type of behavior that you would want to exist more broadly across the organization. Another approach within this category would just essentially be the curating of stories and content. And so if you can package that up, newsletters are probably a very typical way of doing that. But packaging that up and unfolding the story or narrative that is engaging and really brings meaning and purpose to employees, you certainly can help drive higher levels of performance in the categories that you want, especially in the customer-centered spaces. Empathy programs. So another, just bring to life the voice of your customers. So effective ways, if you have a survey program in place, you're probably capturing a lot of verbatims. You might also be complementing that with interviews and maybe audio or video recordings of customer testimonials. And so again, whether it's to emphasize some bright spots that you'd like to see happen more often and more frequently across your team, or whether it's to highlight a challenge area or a problem and complement that with a path forward to address that problem in some reliable, consistent fashion, making sure that you're bringing that to life with real voice of customers, whether it's their quotes and written verbatims or kind of recordings and testimonials are very effective ways of making that emotional connection with people and teams, which definitely affects their behavior. The next area is on engaging people's minds, and so this is the intellectual understanding that oftentimes hits on why there's a reason, aside from doing good by customers and making sure that they're happy, satisfied, getting great value from your products or services. This provides the connection, oftentimes a financial one, that would show how the work that's being done connects with the business model in a company. And so obviously for customer success, that is a growth strategy for a company. And so having this analytical proof of progress that's being made, the positive changes that are occurring, and having a very real correlation established across a variety of categories. And so on the slide here, I've listed health, net promoter score, adoption. There's a variety of other opportunities, but essentially connecting that with the financial outcomes that you also likely want to drive can be compelling to tell the story of why this is actually important, not only for customers, for your company as well. Identification of high-level drivers. What I mean by that is not every thing is going to matter as much as other things, and so if you can establish what matters most, and typically that would be done by some sort of analysis in connection to outcomes, which could certainly be things like renewal rates. It can certainly be upsell rates. It could be lifetime value. But looking for the things that matter most and that drive the greatest return on those financial outcomes, again, can establish that analytical proof that the work that's being deployed is meaningful. It matters. It produces results. Can also drive the motivation and performance in team. And so, when you're looking at differential in performance, you can also create the view that says where we've done scenario A or use case A, it's yielded these results, and where we haven't, where we've either done something different or we've taken some older model or behavior, it yielded this outcome B. Also makes that connection so that there's buy-in, participation, and belief that the path that you're on will yield greater results, again, for customers, but also financially for your company as well. This approach number 4 really hits around incentive models. And so it's probably obvious that you should have alignment of compensation with the results that you want to drive and achieve. But unpacking that just a little bit more, a mixture of outcome metrics, so the result that you actually want to produce and deliver is certainly an effective way, but also looking at the underlying drivers that I talked about, or any leading indicators of the desired results, is also important. So are you doing the work that is ultimately going to produce the result that you want? And having a mixture of both of those things is certainly effective, because you can see signs of maybe poor performance or great performance earlier on in the process, and have the opportunity and benefit of time to create a better result, perhaps than you're on the path of doing without that leading indicator view. The other area would be a mixture of customer and financial outcomes. So if you have the ability to look at customer outcomes, or even in indicators that might be more in the adoption space, in addition to financial outcomes, having that balance can keep the focus on customers, but also the resulting financial outcomes that would follow. And the other just cautionary comment here would be, also be careful not to overdo it on having compensation be the core focus to drive employee performance and behavior. There's other just very powerful means. If we spoke a little bit earlier around purpose and having meaning, the connection with doing important work that's going to help customers and maybe help the world in some way, and also the career connection. There's other reasons why people would be motivated to go above and beyond in the performance of their work, and so not everything is going to be about the incentive model connection. So keep those other levers in mind as well. The right team for the challenge. So obviously, building a high performance team, you want to make sure that people are motivated, driven in various ways on purpose, the kind of intellectual connection with why are we doing this, the incentive model. But you're also going to need the right team for the challenge that you're facing. And so that, of course, is going to be varied in terms of where you are in building out the team. And if it's a customer success function organization, you might just be launching customer success team for the first time, or you might be fully down that path, and you're in a very much an optimization mode where you're looking to create greater effectiveness or maybe greater efficiency in the team. And so, when building the right team for the challenge, great idea to have a diverse team that's going to come with a variety of different perspectives. But also, with those different perspectives, it is important to build towards alignment on where the team or the company should directionally head. And ultimately, you want to have that common direction that you're pointed at. And while it's constructive and useful to have those various perspectives, having a common direction that you want to move towards will certainly drive performance, because you're not going to have competing directions and people off running in different directions. The right mix of skills and competencies. So if you have a highly defined model and you want experts that can participate and act in that system or process, that might require skills that might be more product oriented, or maybe practice oriented with job role experiences. You might also be in the stage where you're looking to drive a lot of transformation and change in your team, and so with that, that would drive the need for different mix of skills that you should look at. You might need change and transformation, skill sets, Six Sigma. You might need, if it's a large scale change, something like systems dynamics experiences, to see how you can drive broad change across an organization. So looking at that and just making sure you've got the right skills and competencies. Trust and transparency. So that's going to be important in any team dynamic, to make sure that the right things get elevated and surfaced, and that they're visible. But also within the team, that there is trust that can help work to take place at an accelerated pace. And then value on learning. So during the course of time, if you can be a learning organization that is looking at data, looking at results, looking for opportunities to improve, and then complement that with some education and training capability that would follow that, really lessons that you've learned, and drive innovation and positive change in the team. Ultimately, that will elevate everyone's performance. A common topic is also just alignment across the organization. And so what I mean by that is really cross-functional alignment. It's not often that if you're a customer success team, you will have full control of all of the resources and changes that might be required to address the needs of your customers. It might be a product organization. There might be some financial model or contractual changes that you'd want to put in place for customers. A whole variety of different functions that participate. And so having a multilingual business case, and what I mean by that is something that is aligned to the different constituency groups. So if you want to engage and bring the finance team on board with the work that you're doing, what they're likely focused on are company growth, maybe market share capture and position, maybe it's the margin level in the company. If you're looking to bring a product organization on board for some of the change, they're likely focused on bringing new innovations to market, maybe also capturing market share. But those different constituencies are going to care about different things, and they're going to be focused on different things. And so making sure that your messages are aligned with their interest is going to help to bring them on board. Putting the spotlight on others, what I mean by that is when there's a success, when you've taken a positive step forward in working with one of those other functions, putting the spotlight on the great work that they did, the positive results that have taken place by their participation. That spotlight is going to help with bringing on future work and creating the positive momentum that you're going to want to drive an increased engagement and increased participation in the success of customers. Having your goal and aspiration out there, demonstrated listening. So, I just say when you have a message, I just say essentially don't be shy about putting that out there to the market and making it visible to your customers. There might be a customer promise statement that you make out that talks about your commitment to customers and how you intend on delivering that. There can also be demonstrated listening that goes out to customers. In particular, if you have a survey program, you're capturing a lot of insights on what customers actually want, maybe changes they'd like to see, and so making sure that there's some response that says, you're taking action, you're doing something about all this great feedback, is something that drives the activity within your company as well. In addition to making it visible to customers, and that it's now a commitment that's made external, and it creates the compelling need to act on that. Feedback loops, making sure that you're taking this learning and elevating any cross-functional challenges. That creates an opportunity to work on things with other functions. And I spoke about high levels of engagement and trust. That's true within teams, but it's also very true across teams as well. So visual management system. So this is the last approach. Making sure that your goals, KPIs are visible to the full organization. And so there might be different perspectives that get created for some of the different teams. But it's important to make sure that everyone has visibility into how a team's performing, how the organization is performing, and are you making progress towards those overall goals? Inspecting that. So, there's plenty of phrases out there on the importance of making sure that there's inspection or measurement of the results that you want to drive. But to go along with that would be performance management system and approach, so that those things get reviewed, they get talked about when leadership speaks, that those are the things, the important things are being talked about, and that's going to direct a lot of employee behavior, which obviously will focus the energy of teams on what's important to you. Tactical strategic management system. So, short-term view, there's a lot of, quarterly focus typically in companies. And so it's important to also have a balanced view with the long-term in mind as well. And so that might be looking out a year out in terms of maybe renewals that are coming up in a year, and how are you performing, and with the benefit of time, what might be possible to drive positive change for those customers. And the right technology partner, certainly making sure that you've got access to all of this insight information, and in particular around your progress on views. That's something that Tatango obviously plays very heavily into. So I won't go into this in any great detail, but it's point back to one of the prior webinars we had on metrics. So how to specifically measure across a number of these categories, whether it's looking at the employee experience, looking at your delivery of your customer engagement process, or you delivering the right things at the right time for the right customers, how to execute across the entire customer journey, looking at the relationship and loyalty levels that you have, and ultimately the business outcomes that you're delivering for customers and company. We've covered that in one of the prior webinars, so there's some content there that you can also refer to if you hadn't joined. And so for Tatango, we start with those goals in mind, and build out everything that needs to be put in place, whether it's the tracking of specific KPIs against those goals, defining the customer engagement process, how to leverage the power of campaigns and automation to extend your reach, And with that, Lorena, I think I'll turn it back over to you to wrap up. And it looks like we do have some time for some questions as well.
Yeah, that's been great. Thank you so much, Kevin. We hope this webinar has been informative for you as you think of not only creating your team, but also developing your team and expanding on your team and ensuring that the many different topics covered here can help make your team even that much more successful and ensuring that they are all aligned to the business outcomes for the company. So with that, we'll give a couple of, we'll give a few minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your screen. Yeah, one of the questions we received is, will we be sharing the slides today? And yes, we will be sharing the slides. And we appreciate all those that have joined. I do have one question here, a couple of them actually. How do you see company culture fitting into this picture and affecting the performance of a team?
All right. It's definitely a complex topic on culture. What I think I'd say is, whatever your culture is in the company probably somehow ties back to, how your company has seen success over the course of time. And so whatever the focus was, whatever the behaviors were that produced that success, probably drove what was important to the company, what gets valued, and creates the pattern of behaviors that would exist. And so, thinking about really, it was approach number one, I believe, on the alignment of purpose, mission, values, beliefs. If you'd want to, change culture, I think those are the areas that you need to make sure that there would be alignment on. The pivot you ultimately want to make if you're also looking to drive change would be to go from things that are changes that are project driven, or they might be initiatives that you're creating, to really having the culture drive the performance and change. And so if customers are valued and you're customer centric, if you're seeing problems rather than relying on projects, turning to employees and making it part of the behavior patterns to drive those results.
Great, thank you. There's another question. What are some techniques you've deployed for building trust across customer success teams?
Yeah, so another great question. I think on that topic, if you can find some specific areas that are surfacing that create a breakdown in trust, and it might be within the team, it might also be between functions in the company as well, and have some case study type examples prepared, and really run like a more or less, I'd call it an immersion workshop, where you can unfold what the implications of that are. Where there were opportunities to maybe act or respond differently, what might have actually mattered if the right information or context had surfaced in that moment, and use that to fuel kind of the approach where you're entering into a situation believing that there's going to be positive intent across your other team members, your other colleagues, and other functions, and focusing on what behaviors might have helped that situation, so that next time around, there's actually a different approach. And if you can run, some periodic spot checks, you might be able to come up with a shorter version of that in the form of a team huddle that can take place. After going through it a couple times, I think that that is something that's effective to drive some higher levels of trust.
Okay, here's another question. We're a very small team learning about CS, and we want to do it right, but we're struggling with the different misunderstandings and alignment with CS and the CEO, who mixes it with support operations. How could we stay true to the CS methodology?
Yeah, so that might, and it might be something to even follow up directly on, but just to give some response that would be brief. I think the distinction is really around customer success being a growth strategy for the company. And so rather than some of the existing functions that were mentioned there with support or operations, which are going to likely participate in that success process, creating some of the distinctions between driving growth and using the success of customers as an effective means to do that, versus some of the maybe more reactive approaches that are typically associated with support teams. I've definitely seen support organizations trying to step a little bit more into the proactive space rather than reacting to open cases and tickets. But making sure that that path to drive adoption, creating value for customers, delivering business outcomes, driving creating additional opportunity for the company, whether that's handled by the customer success team or not, and ultimately making sure that there's not only high renewal rates and retention rates, but that you're creating a loyal customer base that's going to stay with you for the long haul. That kind of equation for growth is distinguished from what you would typically see from a support or an operations organization.
Okay, so we're going to do one more question. I'm going to kind of mix these two up together. And as a thank you to everyone, we really appreciate you guys sending in the questions. We definitely encourage you to fill out our survey, which will come after this, and let us know what you're interested in, because we'd love to expand our webinars and and touch on the topics that are important to you. So here's a question. Do you feel that a background in customer success is required to be successful in the role? Or, can you hire somebody else that brings on diversity, a different diverse background? And what basic skills and abilities are necessary for the role?
All right. There's a fair amount there. So I think number one, if you rewind the clock, it was the first customer success organization that I had launched was in 2011, and so while there may have been the ability to find people with customer success experience on their resume, it was probably more likely called something else. I think there's a variety of different roles that are important that relate to having subject matter expertise. It might be vertical expertise. It might be product expertise. There's certainly plenty of customer facing roles. So the level in an organization, I think, matters a lot. And so if it's a broad question around customer success, if you're designing the team, the process, the practices, certainly I would say having that experience of building out teams and organizations and customer success functions would be important to have. If it's joining the organization as a CSM, some of those other job categories and skill sets and competencies might be enough to enter in. So certainly valued, and I think if you can package all of those things up together in the same person, obviously I think that that helps to create kind of a better candidate and fit situation. But it might not be an exclusive thing for a customer success role. I think the type of position is going to matter, and the degree to which you might require that product expertise, or if it's a large portfolio company and maybe it's a more generalist approach, some of those other skill sets might actually matter an awful lot for a candidate as well.
Great. Thank you guys so much. We've obviously gone over time, but we really appreciate your questions. We look forward to having you at our next webinars. Obviously check our website when you get a chance, and we continue to have webinars on a monthly basis, and we appreciate you guys joining us. Again, please fill out the survey and let us know how you feel and any information and any great topics that you have in mind. Have a wonderful day.
All right, thanks everyone.